Good morning and welcome back to 7 Minutes of Sport. Now, if you're anything like me at the moment, you are probably spending every minute of the day either watching the Olympics or being a full backseat Olympian, flicking through the BBC News updates and seeing what medals have been won today. So it is with great excitement that I can say I am currently sat in front of a decorated athlete. Now, she represented England in the Commonwealth Games in 2014 at the hammer throw. She has boxed professionally, participated in strongwoman competitions, and then she played rugby professionally for the Harlequins women's team, before then making her international debut in rugby in November 2017, playing for the England rugby team against Canada, then playing in the 2018 and 2020 Women's Six Nations when England won the Grand Slam, and then in the 2021 and 2022 Rugby World Cup. Now, that is only a short snippet of her achievements, so it is absolutely no surprise that she was named one of the Evening Standard's most influential Londoners in 2019. So it is my absolute pleasure to introduce Shaunagh Brown. So Shaunagh, hello and welcome to the podcast.
Hello, good morning, Chrissy. I must say that was all accurate.
Oh,
I don't think
yes.
I've ever had someone do such a detailed intro and get it all correct.
I feel quite proud of myself right now. My research skills are on point, clearly.
Exactly.
Now, there's obviously so much that I could ask today, but as you know, we have 7 minutes. So we're going to be focusing in particular on women's rugby and specifically grassroots rugby. So I have the timer here, as you have seen, is my phone. So the only question left is, are you ready?
I am ready.
Excellent. So um, these questions could obviously be answered in a lot of detail. You represented England at the Commonwealth Games. You then made your international debut in rugby. What was your route into playing rugby?
I guess the main thing I'd say is curiosity. So I grew up not knowing anything about rugby, not knowing it remotely existed. And then I was at sixth form college doing my PE A-level class. And just one of our sessions was someone came in and did a guest rugby session. And it wasn't like a full 15 on 15. And in fact, I believe it was about six boys and two girls. So it was just sort of hitting each other, which was incredible. Um, and the coach just kept it because the boys were holding the bags. He just kept saying to hit harder and like be heavier. And I thought, where has this man been all of my life? Generally, I've grown up, not necessarily family, because my family let me be who I wanted to be, but like society is constantly telling you to calm down, be quiet, sit nicely, play nicely, or you need to do your hair pretty, etc., etc. All girls and women will relate to that.
Yeah.
But yeah, all of a sudden I've got this man telling me to just hit harder, and I thought, well, this is definitely a sport for me. And I couldn't partake at the time because I was in athletics, as you said, and made it to the Commonwealth Games, so I was at a very high level. And it was only once I'd finished with athletics after Commonwealth Games 2014, I thought, I remember that rugby stuff. That was a lot of fun. Let me give that a go. So I just rocked up to my local rugby club, Medway Rugby Club, on a Tuesday evening, and the rest is history, as they say.
Wow, that is honestly incredible. So I'm going to focus on the non-professional level of rugby, and that's the grassroots level. Do we know at the moment what the current scale of women and girls rugby is in this country at the grassroots level?
I can't remember the numbers off my head, but there's still so many rugby clubs who do not have a girls and or women's section. And I can tell you the biggest women and girls section in the country is Medway Rugby Club. And for me, that's just complete coincidence, that I live in an area that have had at the time and still have and still growing the biggest women and girls section and completely part of the beginning of my journey in getting me into and staying in rugby. But yeah, it's sad when you hear how many clubs don't have women and girls, but you do also hear plenty of stories about how clubs want a women and girls section, and they've either tried it and couldn't get it off the ground, or like they just don't know what to do because men and boys have always known that they can play rugby, and so they sometimes just turn up at the club. But women and girls still don't know that they can and that it's a space and a sport for them. So you have to go out and actively recruit and actively work on it. So for me, it's a different type of skill set. Someone who's in a job where, I don't know, you're selling football tickets to Manchester United. I mean, it's not a particular achievement to sell 60,000 plus tickets every week, but you go to a local rugby club and, I don't know, sell 500 tickets. That's a big deal. That's a bigger deal than selling Premiership football tickets. So yeah, it's about having the people in with the skill set to grow and attract new people, and let women and girls know that it's a sport for them, but also let their adults know. So they just take them down, and there's no, like, remove the stigma of, a lot of people think, oh, honestly, I hear so many people, oh, I don't want my girl to turn lesbian. And they sort of whisper the word lesbian as if it's a dark art. And I go, it doesn't work like that. You don't play rugby and turn one way or the
And you
other.
know what? That is so disappointing to hear as well, that there's a stigma at all around the sport. Um, and why is it that that grassroots level of rugby is so important to the future of women's rugby, kind of looking forward?
Yeah, it's entirely the future of women's rugby. Without grassroots, you do not have an elite section, an elite side, um, a very good international side, as we are as England women. Nobody starts off being an international rugby player. You don't just rock up and go straight into an England game. You have to be in and around the grassroots section, and you have to have somewhere to learn their trade. And one of my favorite sayings is, every expert was a beginner at one point. So it's just, without grassroots rugby, without the people to watch and support, like, categorically, the elite game doesn't happen. So it's completely essential.
Absolutely. Now, moving on slightly, some listeners who are listening to this may have heard of the Touch to Twickenham programme, but for those who haven't heard about it, can you just explain what that is?
Yeah, Touch to Twickenham is a competition. It's a touch rugby competition, and the aim is to get more schools and colleges and organisations educational organisations who don't play rugby, or generally don't play rugby, to play rugby. And it's removing that sort of the physical element of it that understandably, so many teachers and sometimes parents and maybe even the students themselves are scared of. So people can turn up to the competition, and you're not going to get hit. That's the whole thing. And for me, it's my heart, because the focus is wholeheartedly on new schools who have never played rugby before, or haven't played for at least 5 years. And so that's me. And when I've been to the competition, I've been to the final, the amount of young people who come from a similar background to me, have never heard of rugby before playing in that tournament, even teachers. I had a conversation with one teacher. She's like, I've got no idea what today is and not what rugby is, but it was a day out. It was free to enter, and apparently the kids love it. So I'm happy. And that is music to my ears, just removing, again, another stigma from rugby, that you have to be aggressive and it's a dangerous sport, and it's really not.
Absolutely. And it sounds like it removes a barrier as well as a stigma to try and make it more accessible for the younger generation to get into rugby in a
Yeah,
way.
exactly.
And I think you may have already answered this a little bit, and it may be the same question as I've asked earlier on, but why are programmes such as Touch to Twickenham so important to the future of women's rugby as a whole?
Yeah, it's all part of that, going back to the grassroots thing and getting people into rugby. So it is aimed at schools, but the hope is students play at school, and then they go home and say, I want to find my local club. I want to be part of the grassroots game. And maybe I want to play for England, Ireland, Scotland, Wales, whichever around the world your home nation is. It gives people that hope. And another big emphasis for Touch of Twickenham is the girls playing. Now, it's a mixed tournament, all teams mixed, and they have to have a minimum of 4 girls on the team at all times. So and even if you're a boys' school, that's no excuse. You have to link up with a girls' school. So again, my heart is getting people who don't play rugby, usually, whether it's for socio-economic reasons, demographic reasons, or gender reasons. It's about encouraging girls, and not only encouraging girls to get there, but encouraging boys to want to have them there and to need them there. And I realize, even as an international rugby player, when I play touch sometimes, the men still don't pass to me. And I blow my lid, because it happens at community level, when you see the like I say, the babies, like the 10, 11, 12-year-olds. well, the age that they can play with girls, they don't pass to the girls. The boys don't pass to the girls. I'm like, and then as an adult, it also happens. And yeah, it's an interesting conversation afterwards when I'm effing and jeffing.
Now, I know the listeners obviously get the audio too, but what they can't see is that when Shaunagh just said that as an international player, she doesn't get past you, my jaw dropped all the way down, which she was able to see. But obviously the listeners weren't. My goodness me. Now, obviously, programs such as Touch the Twickenham have been such an important change for girls rugby in particular. But in your view, what have been the most important developmental changes that have been made so far in women and girls rugby for it to have grown at the moment to where it has grown to?
For me, it comes down to the investment of England Rugby and the RFU, and that's me obviously speaking as an English qualified rugby player, and so that's what I know. And they've given, well, since 2019, England women have had full-time playing contracts, and so and those of a reasonable level to live on as well, because there's a few suspicious playing contracts around it in other countries, and it's an amount of money that you cannot live on, and so have to get another job. But then it's not just at that elite level. Again, it's the investment in the grassroots, and we've got a Women's World Cup coming to England in 2025.
Oh, brilliant.
Yeah, exactly. And seeing all the different, well, just pots of money, as it were, to encourage clubs to have women and girls sections, but also just to have like facilities. And once you get there as a woman or a girl, there's a toilet, there's a sanitary bin, there's a place for you to get changed, a warm place that's not just used as a store club. It's about having a store cupboard, but it's about having a space for women and girls once they get there.
And what do you hope to see in the future of women's rugby?
Just more and more and more and more women and girls not only playing but refereeing and coaching and being on the sidelines watching, being social media managers for your local team, the person who washes the kit, the person who does the admin, the person who organizes the games, having many buggies on the side of pitches, because then it's a whole family event. It's not just one person, whether it be mum or dad leaving the house to quickly get a bit of rugby in. Actually, you've got families down at your local rugby club enjoying and the club and the sport and the people that come with it. So yeah, ultimately it's just thousands and thousands and thousands of more women and girls playing, but equally it's having the boys and men understand, encourage, be part of that growth as well. This is not just a conversation for women and girls. This is about everyone being on board, and dads saying to their daughters, I think you should play rugby. Or a daughter says to their mum, I want to play rugby, and mum goes, absolutely, like, why not give it a go? So yeah, it's a whole big conversation, but just more.
Absolutely, more and more. And I'm sure we'll both be looking for the future of women's rugby, and I cannot wait to hopefully see it grow in that direction. And again, for the listeners who can't see, my hand is basically vertical. And that does bring us to the end of the questions. I'm going to be completely honest and say I realised in question 2 I hadn't pressed start on my timer, so I have no idea how long we were, but I very much enjoyed that conversation. So thank you so much for coming on.
You're very welcome, Chrissy. Thank you for having me.
And to the listeners, thank you very much for listening. We hope to see you next week. For now, have a great week.